Okay, so two things to note before we dive into this. One, my history with the DCEU is much like the DCEU itself, dark and gloomy. I don't enjoy most of the films. There's three at best which are good: Birds of Prey, Shazam, and Wonder Woman. The rest, and especially Snyder's pocket of the universe, goes from meh to some of the worst films I've ever seen. I'm looking at you, Man of Steel. I do, however, think the ultimate cut of BVS is miles above the theatrical release. So while I was dreading the Snyder cut, I had some faith that with the longer runtime, it would at least be an improvement over Justice League. And two, well, this isn't a film. If we're looking at Zack Snyder's Justice League as a film, I don't think it functions very well. Even as a TV show, I don't think it would work. It's this weird, tainted masterpiece that is so Snyder for good and for bad. But it's a film that will have a strange place in film history. A film that shouldn't exist, but by all means it does. And despite dreading it, I'm sort of glad it exists. This is how Zack Snyder fixed Justice League. Sort of. So I rewatched Justice League before this and it was a pain. The pacing, the tone, the characters, the action, it was an overall mess. It was this weird Frankensteinian blend of two directors who had clearly different visions for the film. Snyder's previous films had been a progression up until this point, building on each other and the idea of this darker universe. Despite me believing the previous films weren't that great, for Justice League to then end up being a complete U-turn on what they'd been leading up to was jarring, and made Justice League feel completely out of place. But now, Zack Snyder's Justice League has arrived. Not a film, but a weird art piece made by Snyder. Right from the get-go, this cheesy, misplaced tone is gone and replaced with a more serious, darker tone we're used to from the DCEU Snyder films. The tone is consistent throughout the film, and it's the first of Zack's films where I think it truly works. The decision by the executives at WB who tried to pivot from this tone to be a copy of Marvel, well, it was their first mistake. Zack Snyder's Justice League clearly shows the tone the film was written and shot for, and trying to twist that tone to fit a more Marvel-like mold, well, the movie didn't work. This film, it is dark, though it still has fun and light moments, but this comes from the characters themselves instead of the components of the film. The Flash being the comic relief really works in this film, as every other character isn't trying to be a comic relief. Most of them are well-defined individuals in this world. Speaking of the Flash is given justice in this film. In the original, Ezra's take on him felt unearned and cheesy, as he didn't spend the time building up his character. In Zack Snyder's Justice League, we get time to be with Barry, find out who he really is. He's not just used as a weak part of the group, but another incredibly important member. His quirks being related to his speed were more apparent in the film, and his quips added a nice levity to the darker tone. The final battle against Steppenwolf has an emotional component in the form of Barry, which added some needed weight to the scene instead of it just being a quick action superhero climax that we're used to. Ezra's performance really shines in this film, and it was nice to see his character breathe a bit more. This film also actually gives some character development to Cyborg. Ray Fisher gets far more screen time in this, and it's earned. The whole story with his father is emotionally powerful, and it's nice to get some emotion and history behind his character instead of just being some emo robot. His backstory is tragic and upsetting, but Snyder allows his character to breathe, which lets audience sympathise with him more and feel excited when he is integral to stopping Steppenwolf. The final battle managed to build tension, which Justice League lacked, through the Flash and Cyborg, and adding a touch of emotion to the climax helped make this ending less of a generic superhero smash 'em up. The other League members were great as well. Affleck delivers a great performance of Bruce Wayne. He plays the cocky billionaire incredibly well, and his dynamic with the rest of the heroes, especially Diana, is really fun. Gal Gadot is great, as usual. What's surprising is how much better I enjoyed her scenes in this film, especially the London bank scene. With Snyder's tone, the action, and the editing of the fight, it just works better in this film. The little touches like seeing Diana speak to the kid just add some depth to her character. As to why she blew up the bank and hit the guy with a big blast like that, I don't know. It's Snyder being excessive. Momoa is there, I guess. Adams has some good continuation of the Lois story, but the MVP of this movie is Jeremy Irons. He's brilliant, his take on Alfred is fantastic. The sarcasm, the quips, his dynamic with Bruce, is a real fun take on an old character. The Superman story beats were well earned in this, and I enjoyed Cavill's performance. However, the prior movies are void of logical character development, and the arc of Superman's character within the DCEU is nonsensical. The world both simultaneously hates him, but sees him as a symbol of hope. Unfortunately, just saying hope a million times in a film doesn't make him a symbol of hope. This movie, however, redeemed him a bit. The scene with Lois and Martha was touching, and I really enjoyed both his dad's, Jor-El, and Jonathan's VO when he donned the black suit. But if his character had been built up to be a symbol of hope instead of the confused mess of a character we got, then all his scenes would have meant a lot more. What's incredible is how dramatically different the movie is compared to Justice League, with a lot of the film being scenes we hadn't seen. And while this is obviously cause for the films being different, along with the characterization and time we get to spend with the League to flesh them out, there are a few key technical aspects that elevate this film over its predecessor. 1. The music. The score works way better. Junkie XL rewrote a whole score for this behemoth of a film, and it shows. The weird ethereal voices for Wonder Woman and the Amazons, and the fusing with the Wonder Woman theme somehow making the theme even more obnoxious and grand. When the score kicks in, it feels epic and powerful, truly like we're watching a momentous event. The Man of Steel score, while a great score on its own, doesn't mesh with its film in my opinion, but it works perfectly here. It had an emotional charge to it that I didn't expect but absolutely loved. The darker notes wrapped in this theme of hope, symbolising what Snyder was trying to go for with Superman in this film. 2. The colouring. Colouring can make a huge impact on a film. A film is made with a certain colour palette in mind, and Snyder clearly wanted this to match the palettes of his previous films. Here we get to see it in action, in all its dark glory. The problem with changing the colouring in post-production is that all of the sets, locations, and lighting aren't chosen to complement a stark change in colour. This results in the weird colouring of suits and backgrounds as seen in the original cut. This is nowhere to be seen in Snyder's, and while it may not be a colouring expected for a Justice League movie, it's a colouring that matches the tone of the film perfectly. 3. The shots. The cinematography in this film at times is beautiful. The Wonder Woman shot throwing the briefcase, the Superman shot above the Earth, the Flash running through the Speed Force, it was unexpected how good parts of the film looked. The visuals for the most part were good too, some clunky CGI in places, but for the most part it was great. And this is a personal opinion, but I loathe Snyder's directing of action. I feel like it's disjointed and there's a lack of spatial awareness. There's never a complete sense of what's going on in the battle at all times. But in this film, it was kinetic and smooth, and the action was smart, which is better than most of the DCEU films. Alas, this film isn't perfect, far from it. Some of the shots ran far too long. I mean, did we really need 2 minutes of an Icelandic group of girls singing and sniffing a jumper? Like, why? The reality is, this film didn't have to be as long as it did. There's some fat that could have been trimmed. The runtime is egregious. Some shots linger on people or events that add nothing to the larger story. The film would have still been long even if some of it had been cut, but it would have been a bit cleaner. In saying this, Snyder wouldn't have been able to tell the story he did without the runtime, as there's so much to set up in this film. It wouldn't have met the 2-hour limit set by WB, so for that I'm glad we got this weird mini-series film art piece thing to flesh out the characters. Along with the insane runtime, there was a lot, and I mean a lot, of clunky, awkward dialogue.
It's toxic. That's good.
At some points, it was normal superhero cheesy lines, but at some points it was noticeably bad and incredibly jarring. Some story beats as well weren't incredible, like the incredible scene where we meet the Flash, only to be ruined by an awful music choice and an incredibly creepy way of saving Iris. While the added background to Steppenwolf was necessary, he's just another basic villain whose purpose is to seek out MacGuffins, fight people, and then lose. Comparisons between him and Thanos are expected, and it's not even a contest for which character is better. Although the dark side aspects of the film were interesting, and Steppenwolf's motivations around pleasing him added another dimension to what is a basic villain story. The film, however, lacked a lot of context for the average viewer on this villain storyline. Yet for a DC fan to see Desaad and Granny Goodness on a screen, that was kind of fun. And while the weird nightmare epilogue scene was great and sets up a really interesting premise with a bizarre cast of characters, it was completely unnecessary and didn't add to the film in any way. However, and this surprises me, in this scene we see Jared Leto's Joker, and he's a far cry from the mess he is in Suicide Squad. He plays the Joker in a fun, if albeit unoriginal way, but he has a super interesting dynamic with Batman, and the conversation they're having makes you invested in the character. Overall, it was great to see a director's vision play out the way it intended to be. Was it a brilliant film? No. Was it a great film? No. There's a plethora of things that are wrong with it. But there's some great earned superhero moments, some good character beats, great action, and a clear through line. It has a consistent tone and removes the worst scenes in dialogue and lips from the original, yet the film is still riddled with bad dialogue. This is a film by Snyder for Snyder, and it's incredible it's as good as it is. It's a love letter from Snyder to a world and characters he loves, and a film his daughter would be proud of. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you guys have any opinions about Justice League, which I'm sure you probably do, please let me know. I want to know if you enjoyed it, if you hated it, if you noticed things that I didn't. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and if you like this sort of content, consider subscribing, and don't forget to let me know in the comments below what you found in frames.